a dirt road just 2 miles from home. A child's belongings scattered in the morning light. And by afternoon, a body discovered in a drainage ditch, turning a missing person report into a homicide that would remain unsolved for decades. If you want more true crime cases broken down step by step, like and follow for more investigations that still haven't been solved. Brittany Locklear was a 5-year-old child living in Bowmore, North Carolina within Hoke County. She was a member of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina, a community whose presence spans the neighboring counties of Robeson, Scotland, Cumberland, and Hoke. Her life was rooted in this cultural environment, which formed part of her identity from an early age. Brittany attended kindergarten at West Hoke Elementary School, where she was known as the youngest and smallest student in her class. Teachers and classmates affectionately called her Little Brittany, a nickname that reflected both her size and her presence within the school community. Despite her age, she was described as having a strong and independent personality. At the same time, she was known for her warmth, often smiling and offering hugs to those around her. Her interests included a fascination with the story of Pocahontas, which connected to her broader cultural awareness and imagination. This interest illustrates how storytelling and cultural narratives influenced her daily life and sense of identity as a young child. At home, Brittany lived with her mother, Connie Locklear Chavis, and her 18-month-old half-sister, Brianna. The household reflected a close family unit, with routines centered around school and caregiving. Following Brittany's disappearance, her absence had a lasting impact on Brianna's upbringing. Increased safety measures became part of daily life, including constant supervision and early awareness of personal safety. This section establishes Brittany as an individual within her family and community, presenting the factual details of her life before the events that followed. No additional assumptions or interpretations are included in this account, and all details remain grounded in reported information. The focus remains on her identity as a child within her community and the relationships that defined her early life before the crime occurred and shaped those around her. Disappearance of Brittany Locklear began in the early morning hours of January 7, 1998, in Bowmore, North Carolina. At approximately 6:30 a.m., Connie Locklear Chavis woke her 5-year-old daughter, Brittany, to prepare for school. As part of their routine, Connie helped Brittany get dressed, carefully selecting her outfit for the day. Brittany wore a green and white softball t-shirt, green denim coveralls, green and pink tennis shoes, and white socks. Her hair was tied back with a green hair tie, and before stepping outside, she put on her Little Red Riding Hood winter coat. After getting ready, the two left their home and walked toward the bus stop located at the end of their driveway, less than 500 feet away. This short walk was part of a familiar daily routine they had followed nearly 100 times before. There was nothing unusual about the morning, and the process of waiting for the school bus had become predictable and routine. At approximately 7 a.m., while standing at the bus stop with Brittany, Connie made the decision to briefly return inside the house to use the bathroom. Brittany remained outside at the end of the driveway, waiting for the bus as she had done many times before. The time window during which she was left alone was brief. When Connie returned moments later, Brittany was no longer there. The area around the bus stop was empty, and there was no immediate indication of where she had gone. Initially, Connie believed Brittany may have boarded the school bus during her absence. Acting on that assumption, she drove to West Hoke Elementary School to confirm her arrival. Upon reaching the school, Connie was informed by school officials that Brittany had not arrived that morning. This confirmation marked the moment when uncertainty gave way to the realization that Brittany was missing. Abduction of Brittany Locklear was confirmed through statements provided by neighbors shortly after her mother contacted authorities on the morning of January 7, 1998. These accounts established that Brittany had not simply wandered away or boarded her school bus, but had been taken from the end of her driveway. Witnesses reported seeing a full-size pickup truck approach the bus stop area where Brittany had been waiting. While the exact color of the vehicle remained uncertain, the description of its size and type was consistent across multiple accounts. According to these observations, the truck approached quickly and came to an abrupt stop near the edge of the driveway. A man exited the vehicle immediately after it stopped. Witnesses stated that he moved toward Brittany, grabbed her, and returned to the truck within seconds. The sequence of actions was described as rapid and deliberate. The vehicle then left the scene quickly, traveling away from the area before anyone could intervene. These accounts provided the first clear indication that Brittany had been abducted. The speed of the incident limited the ability of witnesses to provide further identifying details about the individual involved. However, their statements established a basic timeline and confirmed that another person had taken Brittany. Some witnesses noted that Brittany did not appear to resist during the encounter. This observation led investigators to consider whether she may have recognized the individual, though no conclusions were drawn. The timing of the incident, occurring shortly after 7 a.m., also raised questions about whether the act had been planned around her daily routine. Law enforcement used these witness statements as a foundation for the early investigation. The description of the pickup truck became a central focus, guiding efforts to identify potential suspects and locate the vehicle involved in Brittany's abduction. Search for Brittany Locklear began within hours of her reported abduction on the morning of January 7, 1998. After authorities were notified, law enforcement and members of the local community quickly mobilized to search the surrounding area. The response was immediate, reflecting the urgency of a missing 5-year-old child taken from her home environment. A large-scale ground search was organized, involving numerous individuals who focused on areas near Brittany's home, as well as nearby roads and wooded locations. Officers canvassed the area, gathering additional witness statements, and attempting to identify any further details that could assist in locating her. At the same time, tips from the public began to come in, adding to the volume of information investigators needed to review. By approximately 9 a.m. that same morning, searchers made a significant discovery. Items belonging to Brittany were found on a dirt road located about 2 miles from her home. These items included clothing she had been wearing earlier that day. The presence of these belongings confirmed that Brittany had not remained near the bus stop and had instead been taken away from the original location. The discovery of her clothing marked a critical shift in the investigation. What had initially been treated as a missing child case was now clearly identified as an abduction involving movement across multiple locations. The distance between the abduction site and the recovery of her belongings suggested that a vehicle had been used to transport her. Despite the rapid response and extensive search efforts, none of the tips received during the initial hours led to an immediate breakthrough. Investigators continued to process incoming information while expanding their search, working to piece together the sequence of events based on the available evidence. Discovery of Brittany Locklear's body occurred on January 8, 1998, one day after her abduction. At approximately 2 p.m., searchers located Brittany in a roadside drainage ditch situated about 3 miles from her home in Hoke County, North Carolina. The location of this discovery was in relative proximity to where her clothing had been found the previous day, establishing a connection between the initial evidence and the final recovery site. The condition and placement of Brittany's body confirmed that the incident extended beyond the initial abduction site. The distance between her home, the location where her belongings were recovered, and the drainage ditch indicated movement across multiple areas. This sequence reinforced the understanding that she had been transported following her abduction. An autopsy was conducted to determine the cause and manner of death. The findings indicated that a possible sexual assault had taken place. The official cause of death was determined to be drowning in the drainage ditch where she was found. These medical conclusions provided investigators with critical information regarding the nature of the crime and established key elements for the ongoing investigation. Following the autopsy results, law enforcement expanded their investigative efforts. Authorities began questioning registered sex offenders within a 50-mile radius of Brittany's home. This step reflected standard investigative procedures based on the evidence obtained during the examination. The discovery of Brittany's body marked a significant turning point in the case. The investigation shifted from an active search to a homicide inquiry, guided by both physical evidence and medical findings. Law enforcement continued to gather information, focusing on identifying individuals who may have been connected to the crime based on proximity and prior records. North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation became central to the case following the discovery of Brittany Locklear's body, as investigators moved into the early stages of a homicide investigation. Law enforcement agencies began pursuing numerous leads, relying on both physical evidence and information provided by the public. In the days after the crime, tips were reported from individuals in the surrounding area. Authorities conducted interviews with residents and potential witnesses, working to gather any detail that might help identify the person responsible. These efforts were focused on reconstructing the timeline and verifying the sequence of events described by those who had seen the abduction. A key element guiding the investigation was the description of the suspect vehicle. Witnesses had consistently reported a full-size pickup truck, though the exact color remained unclear. This detail became a primary focus for investigators, shaping interviews and follow-up inquiries. Law enforcement worked to identify vehicles matching this description within the region and examined any connections that could be established. Despite the large volume of tips received, none led to the identification of a definitive suspect. Investigators were faced with the challenge of processing and verifying a significant amount of information in a limited time frame. The number of leads created difficulties in determining which details were most relevant, contributing to the lack of immediate progress in the case. At the same time, physical evidence collected from both the abduction site and the location where Brittany's body was found was submitted for laboratory analysis. This evidence was sent to the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation for processing. While results were not immediately conclusive, the preservation and examination of this material would later become important in the continued investigation. 2002 Brittany Locklear suspect investigation marked a significant moment in the ongoing investigation into Brittany Locklear's murder. In 2002, authorities identified a potential suspect following the arrest of a firefighter from Fort Bragg in connection with a bank robbery. During the course of that unrelated investigation, officials searched his belongings and made a discovery that drew immediate attention to Brittany's case. Inside the firefighter's locker, investigators found a photograph of Brittany. This discovery raised concerns about a possible connection between the individual and the unsolved homicide. Given the lack of strong leads at the time, the presence of her image among his personal items prompted further scrutiny and led authorities to examine his potential involvement more closely. As investigators reviewed the evidence, it was determined that the photograph was not a personal image, but rather a newspaper clipping related to Brittany's case. This clarification reduced some of the initial suspicion but did not eliminate the need for further investigation. Authorities proceeded by obtaining a DNA sample from the individual to compare against the biological evidence collected during the original investigation. The results of the DNA analysis showed that his genetic profile did not match the evidence recovered from the crime scene. Based on these findings, the firefighter was excluded as a suspect in Brittany's case. This outcome confirmed that, despite the initial concern raised by the photograph, there was no forensic link connecting him to the crime. This development illustrated both the importance and the limitations of investigative leads. While the discovery initially appeared significant, it ultimately did not advance the case toward resolution. However, the use of DNA testing played a critical role in eliminating a potential suspect and refining the direction of the investigation. Hope County Sheriff's Office announced a significant development in the investigation into Brittany Locklear's murder on January 23, 2015. After years of limited progress, investigators confirmed that they had obtained sufficient biological evidence to create a genetic profile of the individual responsible for the crime. This marked a notable advancement in the case, which had remained unresolved for more than a decade. The confirmation of a viable DNA profile represented a shift toward the use of modern forensic techniques. Evidence collected during the initial investigation, including material from both the abduction site and the location where Brittany's body was found, had been preserved and re-examined. Advances in forensic science allowed investigators to extract and analyze genetic material in ways that were not previously possible at the time of the crime. This development provided a new avenue for the investigation, offering the potential to identify the perpetrator through scientific means rather than relying solely on witness accounts and traditional investigative methods. The existence of a genetic profile meant that the individual responsible could, in theory, be identified through comparison with existing DNA records. At the same time, questions remained regarding how this profile would be used. It was not publicly confirmed whether the DNA had been submitted to national databases or if additional methods, such as forensic genetic genealogy, would be employed. These possibilities represented potential paths forward, but were not detailed in official statements. The announcement underscored the importance of preserving evidence and revisiting cases as technology evolves. While the identification of a genetic profile did not immediately resolve the case, it established a critical foundation for future investigative efforts. The investigation continued, with the DNA evidence standing as one of the most significant developments in the pursuit of answers. Hope County Brittany Locklear murder case remains unsolved to this day, with authorities continuing to seek information that could lead to an arrest and conviction. A $20,000 reward is currently being offered for credible tips that may assist investigators in moving the case forward. Despite years of investigative effort and advances in forensic technology, no individual has been formally charged in connection with Brittany's death. Family members continue to live with the lasting impact of the crime. Connie Locklear Chavis has publicly expressed frustration over how the case has been referenced in local political discussions without producing meaningful answers or resolution. Her perspective reflects the emotional weight carried by Brittany's family, who have remained engaged in seeking justice while awaiting definitive progress from law enforcement. In a broader context, data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the National Institute of Justice highlights the disproportionate rates of violence experienced by Indigenous women and girls across the United States. These statistics are presented to provide context for understanding the wider issue, while maintaining focus on the specifics of Brittany's case. They underscore patterns identified by national research without attributing additional details beyond established findings. Law enforcement agencies, including the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, continue to maintain the case file as active. Investigators have reiterated the importance of public assistance and the value of any new information that could help identify the individual responsible. The preservation of evidence and continued review of forensic materials remain central to ongoing efforts. The section concludes with the acknowledgement that Brittany's case remains open and the pursuit of answers continues. Authorities and the community alike maintain hope that new information will eventually lead to resolution and accountability in the case.